The night in Konoha was quiet. Too quiet for a village that had once thrived on the constant hum of missions, laughter, and the comforting bustle of everyday life. The air carried the scent of rain, and the streets, though lit by the soft glow of paper lanterns, felt empty, hollow, in a way that no amount of light could fix. Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, stood on the balcony of the Hokage residence, watching the patterns of life play out below. He had always been a man who noticed details others missed, the way shadows pooled around certain rooftops, the subtle hesitation in a villager's step, the almost imperceptible shift in the atmosphere when trust began to thin. The war with the other nations had ended years earlier, but peace, as Minato had come to learn, was rarely a clean victory. It was a brittle thing, prone to cracks that formed in silence. And lately, those cracks seemed to be appearing everywhere in Konoha. There were whispers now, not about enemies at the gates, but about the man who was supposed to protect them, about Minato himself. He couldn't pinpoint exactly when it began. Perhaps it was after the last round of budget cuts to the Ninja Academy, decisions made to ensure Konoha's reserves stayed strong in case of another conflict. Perhaps it was when he refused to send squads to assist certain missions outside the Land of Fire, prioritizing the safety of the village's own people. Or maybe it was simply the nature of leadership, that no matter how well you led, there would always be those who felt they could do better, those who saw your caution as weakness. But there was something else, too. A deeper, older rift. The elders of the village, Homura and Koharu, the ones who had served under the third, had never fully trusted him. Oh, they had supported his appointment as Hokage publicly, especially after his display of brilliance in the war. But in private, their words were barbed. Their counsel was less advice and more subtle steering, trying to align his decisions with their vision of Konoha. And when he didn't, their disapproval rippled through the ranks of the higher-ups, trickling down to the jonin, and eventually into the streets. Still, Minato believed he could bridge the gap. That was his nature. He had navigated war, united factions, earned the loyalty of even the most stubborn shinobi. But uniting a village in peacetime, when fear was replaced by ambition and old grudges, was proving to be a different kind of battle entirely. Kushina, ever his anchor, had warned him. "You can't save everyone from themselves," she'd said one evening as they walked home from the market. Her hand had brushed his, warm and certain. "And you can't make them see the truth if they're already looking for someone to blame." At the time, he'd smiled and told her he'd find a way. He always did. But now, he wasn't so sure. The tension was subtle at first. Mission reports began to come in late. Orders were carried out with less precision. Certain clans, most notably the Uchiha, were growing restless, their loyalty strained by policies they claimed were unfairly targeting them. Minato had tried to address it directly, meeting with Fugaku Uchiha to hear his grievances. But even that meeting had ended with more questions than answers. And then came the rumors. They were small things, easily dismissed, until they weren't. That Minato had been too slow to respond to threats outside the village, that his strategies were overly cautious, that his hesitations cost lives, that perhaps the yellow flash was not the same unstoppable force in peace as he had been in war. At first, he ignored them. Gossip was nothing new in the shinobi world. But when mission leaders began questioning his orders outright, when trusted, Jonin hesitated before saluting him. When INBU agents failed to return with critical intelligence, and no one seemed concerned, Minato knew this was no longer background noise. It was erosion. And erosion, left unchecked, could bring down even the strongest foundation. One rainy afternoon, he called a meeting with the village council. He spoke plainly, laying out the signs of unrest, the dangers of letting these divisions grow unchecked. His voice was calm, but carried the weight of urgency. The elders listened in silence. Danzo's single visible eye remained fixed on him, unreadable. When Minato finished, there was a long pause. It was Hamura who finally spoke. "Perhaps the unrest is not in the village," he said slowly, "but in the Hokage's office." The words were like a blade, not loud, but sharp enough to cut the air in two. Koharu's agreement was quiet, but firm. Leadership is as much about perception as it is about action. If the people no longer feel safe under your guidance, then perhaps it is not the people who need to change. Danzo said nothing, but the ghost of a smirk tugged at his lips. Minato felt something shift then, not in the room, but in himself. He had always believed that strength lay in understanding, that he could reason with anyone if given the chance. But in that moment, he understood that this was not about reason. It was about power, about who held it, and who would claim it when they sensed weakness. The meeting ended with no resolutions, only the faint sound of rain against the windows. Minato walked back to his office alone, the weight of the village pressing heavier against his shoulders than ever before. From his desk, he could see the Hokage monument through the mist. The carved faces of those who had come before him stood resolute against the sky, each carrying their own burdens, their own betrayals. For the first time, Minato wondered if his own face might someday be remembered not for his victories, but for his fall. And somewhere deep within the village, in places the Hokage's light could not reach, the quiet work of betrayal continued, roots spreading beneath the soil, patient and unseen. The storm had not yet broken, but it was coming. The days that followed the council meeting were tense. Minato felt it in the air, in the sideways glances from shinobi he had once trusted completely. The tension was not loud, not chaotic. It was quiet, controlled, deliberate. The kind of tension that builds in silence until it bursts all at once. On paper, the village ran as it always had. Missions were dispatched, merchants moved goods in and out, the academy continued its classes. But behind the reports and daily schedules, there were inconsistencies. Mission results altered slightly, missing signatures, strange reassignments of personnel. It was all subtle enough to avoid notice by anyone not looking for it. But Minato noticed. Kushina noticed too. Late at night, after their son Naruto was asleep, she would sit with Minato at their kitchen table, her long red hair spilling over her shoulders like a cascade of fire. She would listen as he explained the small changes, the delayed responses, the growing list of people avoiding him in public. "You think they're undermining you," she said one evening, her voice soft but certain. "I know they are," Minato replied. "And they're being careful. Too careful. Whoever's doing this knows the village's systems, inside and out. They know how to make things look like mistakes, not sabotage." Kushina's eyes narrowed. "Danzo." Minato didn't respond immediately. He'd suspected Danzo for weeks, but suspicion alone was not enough to act. Danzo Shimura was an old shinobi, one who had always operated in the shadows. As the head of Root, he had resources, connections, and influence that were almost impossible to trace. Moving against him without proof would not only fail, it would make Minato look paranoid, unstable. Still, Danzo was too convenient an answer to ignore. He had been unusually quiet since the meeting. That alone was suspicious. The next morning, Minato began a quiet investigation of his own. He reached out to a few trusted ANBU operatives, those whose loyalty to the village was unshakable, and whose loyalty to him he believed remained intact. He assigned them tasks under false pretenses, monitoring supply shipments, tracking unusual movements in and out of the village, reviewing mission rosters for patterns. The results trickled in over the next 2 weeks. They painted a troubling picture. Certain missions were being rerouted at the last minute, sending capable shinobi far from the village, while leaving less experienced teams to handle sensitive operations close to home. Weapon shipments were being delayed without explanation. Even more troubling, records showed Root operatives present in places where they had no formal assignment. Minato didn't need to see Danzo's name on a report to know. This was his kind of maneuvering, destabilizing trust, making the Hokage appear incompetent, creating a situation where his own strong hand could step in. But Danzo wasn't acting alone. The evidence pointed to cooperation from within the standard chain of command. Certain jonin were quietly complying with these changes. Some elders were signing off on altered missions without question. This was more than political opposition. It was a network. And yet, out in the village, life seemed normal. That was the genius of it. The betrayal wasn't in an open coup, but in a slow erosion of confidence. The common villager would see no change at all, until the day they woke up and the Hokage had been quietly replaced. One evening, as Minato walked home under a sky thick with stars, he was stopped by an older shinobi leaning against a lamppost. The man had been a chunin during the war, a reliable courier who had once delivered critical intelligence through enemy lines. His voice was low, almost hesitant. "They're saying you're too soft," the man murmured, "that you hesitate too much, that the old ways kept us safer." Minato studied him. "Do you believe that?" The chunin looked away. "I believe the village is changing, and not everyone likes how." It wasn't a threat. It was worse. It was a reflection of what people were beginning to believe. When Minato reached home, Kushina was waiting. She could read him instantly. "It's spreading," she said simply. He nodded. "And the worst part is, they're not entirely wrong. I have been cautious. I've avoided certain risks because I thought it would protect them. But in their eyes, that makes me weak." "Protecting them isn't weakness," she said firmly. "It's what you're supposed to do. But if you want them to see that, you'll have to fight this differently. They're playing a political game. You're playing a soldier's game. That's why they're getting ahead." Minato didn't respond right away. He thought about Hiruzen, the third Hokage, and how he had managed the village not just as a leader, but as a politician. He thought about how even the strongest shinobi could lose to someone who never fought on the battlefield, only in the council chamber. In the days that followed, Minato shifted his approach. He began attending clan meetings in person, speaking directly to leaders about their concerns. He visited the academy and the hospital, making sure to be seen in places where people could look him in the eye and remember who he was fighting for. He gave missions to the morning after the council meeting. Minato sat at his desk in the Hokage's office, staring at the reports scattered across its surface. The sunlight streaming in through the window should have been warm, but it felt cold on his skin. The patrol team's deaths weighed heavily on him, not just because they were his shinobi, but because he knew that it wasn't an accident. The survivors' words replayed in his mind. They knew we were coming. Someone told them. If he confronted the suspected jonin outright, the council would accuse him of paranoia. If he stayed silent, more lives could be lost. It was a trap either way, and the council knew it. Kushina found him like that, still, quiet, his eyes fixed on nothing. She placed a steaming cup of tea beside him. "You're not going to win this by playing their game," she said gently. "You have to change the rules." Minato took the cup, but didn't drink. "I don't know if I can change the rules without breaking the village in the process." "Then break what needs to be broken," she replied without hesitation. Her voice was calm, but there was steel in it. "This is our home, Minato. If they take it from you, they'll take it from Naruto too." Her words stayed with him long after she left the room. That afternoon, Minato called for the ANBU operatives he trusted most, masked figures whose names were unknown even to most of their comrades. They stood before him like shadows given form. He didn't give them a speech. He gave them orders. "Root is moving against me," he said plainly. "Find their meeting places. Track their movements. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. And most importantly, bring me proof." For the next several nights, the ANBU moved like ghosts through the village and beyond its walls. Minato stayed awake long into the night, reviewing mission records, cross-referencing patrol routes, and searching for patterns that might lead to the truth. The first breakthrough came 3 days later. One operative reported seeing a root agent meeting discreetly with a council assistant. A second confirmed the transfer of sealed documents from a mission office to an unmarked storage facility. On the surface, nothing looked illegal. But to Minato, it was a breadcrumb trail. Then came the worst piece of news. Danzo was gathering support from several influential clans. The Nara, Aburame, and even some among the Hyuga had been approached. Promises of greater security, more resources for their members, and a stronger, more decisive Hokage were being whispered in private rooms. Minato knew that if the clans shifted their loyalty, his position would become untenable. The betrayal would be complete, and the public would see it as a simple transfer of power rather than the dismantling of their Hokage's authority. He needed to act, but action meant risk. The opportunity came unexpectedly. One night, an ANBU captain arrived at his home with a sealed scroll. Inside was a mission report signed by 2 root operatives detailing the removal of classified records from the Hokage's archives. The records included troop deployments, patrol schedules, and the names of undercover agents. Minato felt a chill. If this information reached enemy hands, Konoha's defenses could be compromised in ways that would take years to repair. This wasn't just political maneuvering anymore. This was treason. He spent the next morning preparing. Quietly, without alerting the council, he assembled a strike team. Not an official ANBU squad. He couldn't risk the mission being leaked, but a mix of trusted shinobi from different ranks. Their orders were simple: infiltrate the storage facility, retrieve the stolen records, and apprehend anyone involved. The mission began at dusk. Minato himself joined them, his presence hidden under a plain mask and cloak. The team moved swiftly, crossing rooftops and slipping through narrow alleys until the dark structure of the facility rose ahead. Inside, the air was stale and smelled faintly of ink and dust. They found the records quickly, too quickly. And that was when Minato knew they had been expected. The trap sprang in silence. Shadows moved among shadows. Kunai flashed, and the room erupted into sudden, close combat. Root operatives fought with mechanical precision, their movements cold and efficient. Minato moved like lightning, his kunai a blur, his teleportation turning him into a phantom that struck and vanished. His team fought valiantly, and within minutes the root operatives were subdued. But the victory was hollow, because standing at the far end of the room, watching with calm detachment, was Danzo himself. "I suppose you'll accuse me of treason now," Danzo said, his voice even, almost conversational. "But remember, Hokage, everything I do is for the village." Minato stepped forward, his gaze unflinching. "You steal from your own people. You endanger lives for power. That's not for the village. It's for yourself." Danzo's lips curled faintly. "Power and the village are the same. Without one, the other cannot survive. And you've grown too sentimental to hold either." Before Minato could respond, Danzo signaled, and more root operatives emerged from hidden compartments in the walls. It wasn't a fight Minato could win outright, not without risking his team's lives. So he made a choice. He grabbed the recovered records, signaled for a retreat, and vanished in a blur of yellow light. Back in the safety of the Hokage's office, Minato locked the records away, his mind racing. Danzo hadn't just shown his hand. He had shown that he was confident enough to confront Minato directly. The walls were closing in faster than Minato had feared. And now, with proof in his hands, he knew the next move would decide everything: his leadership, the safety of the village, and perhaps even his life. Outside, the village slept peacefully under the watch of the Hokage monument. But Minato knew that peace was only an illusion, and illusions never lasted forever. The days after the failed confrontation at the storage facility passed like slow-moving shadows. Minato maintained his calm, outwardly fulfilling his duties as Hokage, receiving mission reports, approving budgets, meeting foreign envoys. But inside, he was already planning his next move. The stolen records were locked away in a hidden compartment only he could access. Every night, he studied them in silence. He searched for gaps, names missing from lists, units whose deployment schedules didn't match official logs. What he found was worse than he had expected. Someone within the village's administrative core had been feeding route mission details for months. That meant the council's corruption was deeper than a few whispers in dimly lit rooms. It was systemic. It was organized. And it had grown bold enough to challenge the Hokage directly. Kushina watched the strain in her husband's eyes. "You can't do this alone," she told him one evening as she laid Naruto down to sleep. "If you keep trying, you'll burn out before the fight even starts." Minato shook his head. "If I ask for help from the wrong person, it's over. The clans are divided. The council is split. The ANBU have leaks I can't close fast enough." Kushina stepped closer. "Then find the right people. There are still shinobi in this village who believe in what it stands for, not just in whoever sits in that chair." Her words planted a seed. That night, Minato called upon a handful of allies, not just from the Hokage's administration, but from those who had little to gain from the council's schemes. Shikaku Nara was one. His clan had been courted by Danzo, but Shikaku himself had remained cautious, unwilling to be drawn into a power struggle without cause. "Your proof is enough for me," Shikaku said after Minato laid the scrolls before him. But it won't be enough for the public. Danzo's a master at twisting facts into stories that favor him. Then we'll give him no room to twist, Minato replied. They began to plan. The idea wasn't to confront Danzo directly, not yet, but to quietly dismantle his network, one thread at a time, disrupt his supply lines, reroute his funding, and expose his operatives in ways that couldn't be tied back to the Hokage. It was a dangerous, patient strategy, and it relied on secrecy above all else. Weeks passed, and for a while, it worked. Route missions began to fail without explanation. Clan members who had been swayed toward Danzo suddenly pulled back when resources they were promised never arrived. Even whispers of dissent within the council grew quieter. But Minato knew better than to think Danzo would simply fade into the shadows. He was too cunning, too ruthless. The counterattack came in the form of rumors. Quiet at first, then growing louder. Stories that Minato was hoarding resources, that his leadership was costing shinobi their lives, that he was too gahati to make the hard decisions. A few civilian leaders began to echo these concerns in public meetings. It was a slow poisoning of the public trust. Kushina saw the toll it took on him. And though she never doubted him, she knew the village's opinion mattered. "You can't just defend yourself, Minato," she said one night as they stood on the balcony, looking over the lights of Konoha. "You have to remind them why they believed in you in the first place." The opportunity to do so came sooner than either of them expected. A distress signal reached the village. One of the outlying settlements was under attack by a rogue group of missing 9. The council began to debate sending a standard patrol force, but Minato overruled them. "I'll go myself," he said. Some called it reckless. Others said it was a political move. But to Minato, it was simply the right thing to do. He arrived at the settlement under cover of night, the enemy forces already closing in. Moving with blinding speed, he intercepted their leader before the group could breach the main street. A few swift exchanges of kunai and teleportation later, the leader lay unconscious, and the rest fled into the trees. The villagers watched in awe as the yellow flash saved them, his presence a reminder of the strength and protection their Hokage offered. By morning, word had spread across Konoha. Not the council's whispers, but stories told by grateful citizens. For a brief moment, the tide seemed to shift back in his favor. But that's when Danzo made his boldest move yet. At the next council meeting, Danzo presented a forged document implicating Minato in unauthorized missions that had allegedly cost several shinobi their lives. He framed it as concern for the stability of leadership. But the accusation was clear. Minato had abused his authority. Minato recognized the trap instantly. If he reacted in anger, it would confirm the narrative of instability. If he ignored it, the story would spread unchecked. So he did neither. Instead, he stood calmly, looking each council member in the eye. "If you believe these accusations, then investigate them thoroughly," I will not interfere, and I will provide full access to my records. But understand this. While you search for ghosts, the enemies outside our walls grow stronger. Decide where your loyalty lies. His voice was steady, but inside he knew that even an investigation cleared of wrongdoing would give Danzo more time to maneuver. Time was the one resource Minato could not afford to lose. When the meeting adjourned, Shikaku lingered behind. "He's forcing you into a corner," he warned. "Soon you'll have to choose. Play defense and hope to survive, or strike so hard he can't recover." Minato didn't answer immediately. He stared out the window toward the Hokage monument, where his face was carved alongside the leaders before him. A symbol of protection, a promise. "I'll make my choice," Minato said finally. "But when I do, there won't be a way back." The weight of Minato's words lingered long after the council meeting ended. In the days that followed, the village was thick with uncertainty. Shinobi whispered in shadowed alleys. Merchants debated in the marketplace, and even the children seemed to carry a quieter, more cautious air. The fractures within Konoha's foundation were no longer subtle cracks, but widening chasms that threatened to swallow the very heart of the village. Minato's decision to neither confront nor retreat left the council in disarray. Danzo, sensing hesitation, seized the moment to tighten his grip on the village's power. His agents moved swiftly, spreading propaganda that questioned Minato's loyalty to the village itself. Some claimed he sought personal glory over the welfare of Konoha. Others whispered of secret alliances and forbidden jutsu experiments. Yet beneath the rising storm, Minato remained resolute. He doubled his efforts to protect the village, leading missions personally when needed and strengthening defenses at every border. His presence was a beacon for those who still believed in the ideals he represented, a reminder that leadership was more than politics and power. It was sacrifice and unwavering commitment. Despite this, Minato's isolation deepened. Trusted advisors grew scarce as fear and suspicion poisoned relationships. Kushina stood by him unwaveringly, the quiet pillar that held his world together amid the chaos. She urged him to find allies beyond the traditional channels, those untainted by the council's corruption. But such figures were few and far between. One evening, as the sun dipped below the mountains, Minato sat alone in his office, the village stretching silently beneath him. The weight of the Hokage cloak felt heavier than ever, burdened by unseen enemies and the ghosts of betrayal. His thoughts turned to Naruto, the son he loved more than anything in the world, and to the future that now seemed more uncertain than ever. "I must protect him," Minato whispered to the quiet room, "no matter the cost." His resolve led him to seek out the remnants of the Uzumaki clan, scattered and diminished, but still proud and powerful. Their expertise in sealing techniques and chakra control was invaluable. With their help, Minato began developing new methods to strengthen the village's defenses and safeguard its secrets from those who would use them for darkness. This alliance was a spark of hope. a quiet rebellion against the forces seeking to undermine Konoha from within. It was a risk, though, as any association with the Uzumaki could be twisted into accusations of favoritism or hidden agendas. Still, Minato believed in transparency and strength through unity. Meanwhile, Danzo's machinations escalated. He orchestrated a series of covert attacks on strategic supply routes, blaming shadowy external foes, while secretly siphoning resources for his loyalists. The village's once steady heartbeat began to falter under these unseen assaults, and fear crept into the hearts of even the bravest shinobi. In response, Minato called upon his closest students, entrusting them with secret missions to uncover the truths behind these attacks. Among them was Kakashi Hatake, a young but skilled shinobi whose sharp mind and steady resolve earned Minato's deep trust. Kakashi's investigations revealed layers of deception that extended beyond Danzo's immediate reach, suggesting a wider conspiracy involving rogue elements from neighboring villages seeking to weaken Konoha's influence. This revelation broadened the battlefield. Minato realized that the threat was no longer confined to the village's walls, but stretched across the shinobi world itself. Protecting Konoha meant navigating treacherous alliances and confronting enemies that lurked both in the shadows and in the light. Through it all, Minato's thoughts remained with Naruto. He trained in secret, preparing his son not only to survive, but to one day inherit the burdens of leadership. Every lesson, every story shared in quiet moments was a seed planted for a future where the boy would stand strong against the darkness threatening their world. But as the net of conspiracy tightened, Minato knew that time was running out. The village he had sworn to protect was fracturing under the weight of betrayal, and the choice he faced was no longer between right and wrong. It was between survival and destruction. One night, under a sky heavy with stars, Minato stood once more on the balcony of the Hokage's office. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the distant echoes of a world on the brink. He closed his eyes, breathing in the cool night air, feeling the weight of a legacy that was as fragile as it was powerful. The path ahead will be dark, he thought, but I will walk it for Konoha, for Naruto, for all who believe in this village. And with that, the yellow flash prepared himself for the storm to come. Knowing that the true battle was only just beginning, the days that followed felt like a slow unraveling of the world Minato had once known. The village, once united by common purpose and hope, now bore the heavy scars of distrust and unseen battles. Each morning, the sun rose on streets where wary eyes met with cautious nods, and whispered conversations filled the air like drifting leaves in an autumn wind. The burden on Minato's shoulders grew heavier with every passing hour, yet his resolve remained unbroken. A silent vow etched into the very fabric of his soul. Minato moved with the precision and speed that had earned him the name Yellow Flash, But now his actions were guided by more than mere combat skill. They were the actions of a leader who knew that war was no longer fought solely on the battlefield, but in the hearts and minds of his people. He reached out to those who still held faith, those who dared to dream of a Konoha unmarred by corruption and betrayal. Among these was Lady Tsunade, the village's legendary medical ninja and a beacon of strength in turbulent times. Together, they forged a quiet alliance, pooling their knowledge and resources to heal not just the bodies, but the fractured spirit of the hidden leaf. Tsunade's wisdom tempered Minato's fierce determination, reminding him that true leadership required patience as much as power. The secret meetings between Minato, Tsunade, and a handful of trusted allies became the heartbeat of a covert resistance. Their plans were whispered in hushed tones, their strategies crafted in shadowed corners, far from prying eyes. They sought to expose the corruption that festered beneath the village's surface, to reclaim Konoha's honor before it was lost forever. But Danzo, ever watchful and ruthless, was no stranger to intrigue. His network of spies and loyalists infiltrated nearly every facet of village life, making the resistance's task perilous. Every step forward was met with countermeasures designed to sow confusion and fear. The village became a chessboard where each move was calculated, and every pawn could be a hidden foe. Minato's heart ached for Naruto, the boy whose bright spirit was a beacon amid the encroaching darkness. He knew that the child's innocence was a fragile treasure, one that the growing shadows threatened to consume. So he resolved to shield Naruto from the storm as best he could, even as the world around them seemed to fracture and fall apart. Training sessions with Naruto became moments of solace and hope. Beneath the ancient trees where sunlight filtered through leaves like scattered gold, Minato imparted lessons of not only ninjutsu, but of compassion, courage, and the weight of responsibility. He told stories of past heroes, of sacrifices made, and futures forged from the ashes of conflict. In these moments, father and son shared a bond that transcended the turmoil engulfing their lives. Yet the path of a Hokage was never meant to be walked alone. Minato sought out alliances beyond Konoha's borders, reaching tentative hands toward neighboring villages whose interests aligned against the shadow threatening to consume the shinobi world. The road was fraught with mistrust and old grievances, but the threat of annihilation demanded unity. Among these fragile partnerships was the uneasy truce with the Sand Village. Its leaders, wary yet pragmatic, recognized that survival hinged on setting aside old enmities. Together, they began to coordinate intelligence and resources, weaving a delicate web of cooperation that stood as a bulwark against the encroaching darkness. Despite these efforts, Minato knew that the heart of the conflict lay within Konoha itself. The poison that Danzo had unleashed could only be eradicated from within, and that required courage and sacrifice. He called upon his closest comrades in the ANBU Black Ops, those willing to walk the razor's edge between loyalty and rebellion. They became his eyes and ears in the shadows, tasked with uncovering traitors and protecting the village from threats unseen. Among them was Itachi Uchiha, a prodigy whose quiet strength and unwavering dedication made him a vital ally. Itachi's own burdens mirrored Minato's, a solitary path paved with sacrifice and silent resolve. Together, they formed a fragile but unbreakable bond, a partnership forged in the crucible of shared duty. The tension within Konoha reached a breaking point when Danzo orchestrated an audacious coup attempt, leveraging his loyalists within the village's elite to seize control. The streets echoed with the clash of steel and the whispers of betrayal as factions vied for power beneath a veneer of order. It was a time of uncertainty and peril, where every decision could mean salvation or ruin. Minato stood at the forefront of the resistance, his voice a rallying call to those who still believed in Konoha's true spirit. His leadership inspired a renewed sense of purpose, a collective determination to reclaim their village from the shadows. Battles were fought not only with jutsu, but with ideals. The fight for a future where trust and honor could once again flourish. Amidst the chaos, Minato's thoughts returned to Naruto, whose youthful optimism burned like a guiding star. The boy's laughter, bright and unbroken, was a reminder of all that was worth fighting for. Minato vowed that no matter the cost, he would ensure Naruto's path was one of hope, not despair. As the dust settled and the echoes of conflict faded, Konoha emerged scarred but unbowed. The village's soul, though battered, remained resilient, a testament to the enduring strength of its people. Minato, weary but unyielding, knew that the road ahead was long and fraught with challenges, but the bonds forged in fire were unbreakable. In the quiet moments before dawn, as the village stirred to life beneath the pale light, Minato stood once more on the balcony of the Hokage's office. The weight of leadership pressed upon him, but within his heart burned an unshakable flame, a promise to protect, to guide, and to never surrender. The legacy of betrayal had left its mark, but from the depths of darkness, a new hope was born. Konoha's story was one of resilience, of courage in the face of despair, and of the unwavering spirit of a Hokage who chose to stand alone so that his village might one day rise again. And so, as the first light of morning bathed the hidden leaf in gold, Minato Namikaze prepared to face the future, a future shaped by sacrifice, loyalty, and the enduring power of love. The sun rose gently over the hidden leaf, casting long, soft shadows across the village that Minato Namikaze had fought so tirelessly to protect. The battles had been won, but the wounds, both seen and unseen, ran deep, etched into the hearts of those who had lived through the storm. Minato stood quietly amidst the awakening village, feeling the pulse of life renewed around him, yet aware that peace was fragile, a delicate flower that required constant care. In the calm that followed the turmoil, Minato reflected on the true cost of the betrayal that had shaken Konoha to its core. It was not just the loss of trust between leaders or the fractures in political alliances, but the strain placed upon the very souls of its people. Families had been torn apart, friendships tested, and the innocence of the younger generation shadowed by uncertainty. Yet through it all, the spirit of the hidden leaf endured, growing stronger in the crucible of adversity. Naruto, the boy whose bright spirit had been both Minato's greatest joy and his most profound responsibility, was a living testament to that enduring hope. Minato's heart swelled with quiet pride as he watched Naruto train with an intensity and passion that spoke not only of the future Hokage he was destined to become, but also of the unbreakable bond between father and son. In every punch, every leap, every burst of chakra, there was a spark of something greater: resilience, love, and a promise that the shadows of the past would not define their destiny. The village itself began to heal, its streets filled once more with laughter and the soft hum of daily life. Merchants opened their stalls, children ran through the marketplaces, and elders shared stories beneath the cherry blossoms. Yet beneath this renewed normalcy lay a vigilant watchfulness, a collective understanding that peace was a journey, not a destination. Minato knew that the scars left by betrayal would never fully fade, but they would serve as reminders, a solemn pledge that such darkness must never again take root. In the quiet moments alone, Minato found solace beneath the ancient trees that had witnessed generations of shinobi rise and fall. The rustling leaves seemed to whisper secrets of the past and hopes for the future, mingling with the steady rhythm of his breath. Here, in the embrace of nature, he felt the weight of his decisions and sacrifices settle gently, a soft lullaby to a heart that had borne more than its share. He thought often of those lost along the way, the friends who had fallen, the alliances broken, the trust shattered. Their memories were threads woven into the fabric of Konoha's story, reminders that every victory was hard won and every moment of peace fragile. Minato's resolve deepened, a quiet vow that their sacrifices would not be in vain, that the village they loved would flourish beyond the shadows of betrayal. As the seasons turned, Minato's leadership evolved from the fierce determination of a warrior to the gentle wisdom of a guardian. He guided Konoha not only with strength, but with compassion, listening to the voices of his people and nurturing the bonds that held them together. His presence became a steady beacon, a reminder that even in the darkest times hope could shine through. Naruto grew under his father's watchful eye, his spirit unbroken by the trials that had marked his early years. Together, they faced new challenges, each one shaping the boy into the hero Konoha needed. Minato's teachings of courage, kindness, and the power of choice resonated deeply, laying the foundation for a future bright with possibility. And so, the story of betrayal transformed into a story of redemption. The hidden leaf stood stronger, not because it had avoided darkness, but because it had faced it with unwavering heart. Minato Namikaze's legacy was not only in his swift jutsu or his strategic mind, but in the love he poured into his village and son, a love that became the true strength behind the Yellow Flash's lightning-fast resolve. In the fading light of day, as stars began to sprinkle the night sky, Minato whispered a final prayer. Not for himself, but for the village he had vowed to protect. A prayer for peace, for healing, and for the enduring light of hope to guide every soul within the hidden leaf. And with that, as the world settled into the quiet embrace of night, the tale of Minato Namikaze, the Hokage betrayed yet unbroken, found its place in the gentle rhythm of time, a lullaby for those who dream of a future where love conquers all. The story ends here, but the heartbeat of the hidden leaf goes on, forever echoing the courage and sacrifice of its greatest guardians.